okay, how can we reduce cost? How can we reduce our stock levels? What can we do process-wise just to get more cash released? That's obviously a particularly interesting one for us at Loughridge Transformations, because process design and redesign and improvement is something that we have a lot of experience in. Most organizations will need to take a look at what is actually their strategic direction, because so much is changing.
Nobody was prepared, and I think companies will have to prepare now for future situations. And it might not be COVID-19 or 20, but something will happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years again. So I think what they need to do is be sure they are sustainable in the new world, in the new situations. They need to be sure that if they want to go on producing their product, whatever it might be, they get the raw materials that they need. The supply chain needs to be reordered to be sure to get your supplies, if it's not possible from one supplier, then from another supplier, or even do it yourself. Same with customers, of course. Even if you can produce something, you need customers for it, and the customers need to be able to get it. So you have to look in the complete chain. So how do you make your product, your company sustainable in this new situation?
I think organizations will have to be preparing for the next potential shock while still dealing with living in at least the sort of tail end or the mid to tail end of the current one.
Yes.
And that's challenging because you need to balance a little bit your immediate needs with your longer term thinking. And if you make too many kind of snap responses, those are not the kind which will actually position you in a sustainable way, as you've been describing. If you think about that from a finance function perspective, which is one of our areas of expertise, if you're a sizable organization, what was your business continuity for your service center if all your people doing all your clothes were based in one place? Did that work?
When you're closing your books, quarter end, for example, if that's dependent on you sitting in quite a big team in the same location, your processes will be designed in a way that you have to speak to person X, Y, and Z sitting close to you. Now, of course, it takes a little bit of work to redesign that process, and you can redesign it that you don't need to sit physically with these people. You can actually have this process almost run the same, sometimes even better, if you're sitting in at home, or you could automate some of it. There are lots of things you can do if you have processes that supports more flexible working options.
If your entire process is based on a single location and people it's entirely possible. Lots of organizations do have multi-center approaches. But whereas that might have only been for the real big companies before, maybe that becomes more appealing for a different category of companies size-wise. And I think whether you're doing that in-house or offshoring, the way that you arrange that and sort of either internally contract or contract with your outsourced partner will probably need another look. Actually, many processes in just about any organization needs to become more sustainable and more robust. You need to find that right balance between de-risking things and it still being cost effective. It's more this product as service model. It gives you an economy of scale which you can't create if your company isn't big enough.
The really big company can employ people and make sure it's sustainable in their company. But smaller companies just don't have the capacity and people to, if someone gets sick or is not able to work, it's probably more safe to have another company support you with your systems. But the big supporting companies can do that.
So one thing is being reliant on a system and having the backup and everything that Hans has just described. But I think a number of companies may realize that there was too much knowledge invested or held by a small number of therefore very critical individuals, and that's not resilient to this kind of situation either. So getting more of a focus on relying on process, which different people can execute, rather than relying on individuals who can become unavailable. So whether you need to really understand your process because you're deciding to buy in pieces in the way Hans just described, or whether it's because you want to de-risk the reliance on particular individuals, really understanding your process and making a fit-for-purpose, cost-effective process. Another thing that's come out of what's happening now is the government or the state takes a larger piece of the economy because of the supporting mechanisms that have been put in place. It could take some time for that to be fully withdrawn. And I think that might see more regulation potentially, different reporting requirements. The level of sort of disruption to the economy globally means that there will be more activity for the state within the economy.
It would be surprising if it didn't come for the reporting requirements and so on.
Sort of trends emerge globally, whether it's for anti-corruption or more gender balance in the workplace, or you could name many things. Whether it's coming from environmental requirements or health medical requirements. And although I think governments will be quite keen not to place more burden on organisations which may be struggling already.
A much bigger focus on what kind of company, what kind of ethics, and what does the company do, how do they do business, bring into light. Is this a company people would like to invest in the future?
Yeah, and I think organisations will be on the one hand dealing with shareholder expectations, just like you say, but on the other hand then customer expectations. Customers are looking for a different experience going forward, whether that's a higher use of online ability to access whatever the product might be, whether that's a different expectation around logistics, whether that's a different expectation around how people interact with them as a result of the changes that we've seen. Yeah.
So people are changing. And
this situation that we're in right now has actually accelerated the transparency on some of these things. What really happens before the item comes into your hands, and then people don't always like what they find out. They didn't realize that that's how things worked.